Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, Native Health's Native American Cultural Affairs program, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm Susan Levy. And February is Children's Dental Health Month, reinforcing the importance of oral health in children, as well as helping parents with tips to keep their child's smile and healthy teeth on track. In the studio to tell us more today is Dr. Thana Boyd. She is the interim dental practice manager and dental hygienist at Native Health. Hello, Dr. Boyd, and welcome to Native Talk Arizona.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for bringing me on the show.
Well, we're super excited. I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your background.
Okay. Hello, I am from the Navajo Nation, and I would like to introduce myself in Navajo. So my clans are Kintlachitni, the Huatlana, Bajishchin, Tachini de Shache, Huatlana de Shanala. I am married, and we have a 22-year-old daughter. My husband is a chef or sous chef at Talking Stick Resort. I did my undergrad at the University of New Mexico, where I received my bachelor's in dental hygiene in 2006. I also graduated with a master's of public health degree in 2012, and in 2022, I graduated with my doctorate of health education from A.T. Still University.
That's a lot of school. That's a lot of stuff. Okay. So I know you're the interim dental practice manager at Native Health. Can you tell us about Native Health's dental programs, and are they for children and adults?
Sure. We offer dental at two locations. One is at our Dunlap location, and one is at our Central location, which is on Central and Indian School. Future-wise, we'll be adding dental to the Native Health Mesa location, and we offer a variety of services. We offer exams, x-rays, cleanings, fillings, crowns, dentures. We also see children, and we're going to hopefully start a mobile dental unit where we're going to the schools.
So what are the ages that you see? Do they have to be like 5, or do you see babies?
Oh, we see babies once they get their teeth in.
Okay. So you should come once a tooth erupts.
Yes, once a tooth erupts.
Okay. All right. And how many operatories do we currently have at our Central location?
Our Central location has 6 operatories. We have one dentist there, and we also have one who's coming on board on March 6th. And then our West location right now is currently have 4 dental operatories.
But I know we're getting more at the new location, right?
Yes, we are getting more at the new location.
And that's due to open, I think, in mid-March. And how many operatories are going to be there?
There's going to be 6.
Wow. And I know some of those are closed and open. And I know that's all state-of-the-art, correct?
Yes.
Like all brand new equipment.
Correct. And at that location, we will offer nitrous for people who need to be calmed down a little bit.
That'd probably be me. All right. So I know we're here to talk about Children's Dental Health Month. What is the purpose or the awareness of Children's Dental Health Month?
Okay, so every February, Children's Dental Health Month brings together thousands of dedicated professionals, healthcare providers, and educators to promote the benefits of good oral health to children. Developing good dental health habits at an early age helps children get a jump start on a lifetime of healthy teeth and gums.
That's pretty important.
Yes, it's very important.
I had always heard the adage, only take care of the teeth that you want to keep, right?
Yes.
So I know you just mentioned that children, when their first tooth erupts, should see a dentist. So if you are like feeling your child's, I guess I should back up. When they're a baby and they're drinking a bottle, is it a good idea to take gauze and like wipe the bottom of their mouth or their gums?
Yes, that's great to do. You can get gauze or even like a washcloth. We even offer little fingertip, like a toothbrush to wipe out the child's mouth when they just have gums.
And then, how early should you do that? Like from when they're born? Or should you do it like when they're 6 months old or 4 months old? Is there a time you should start doing that?
I feel like you should start it at least around 2 to 3 months, just even if it's just their little gums, because you don't want milk to pool in there. And it also gets them used to getting their teeth brushed.
Well, that's a good idea. Now, does it matter if they're being breastfed versus the milk or bottle fed? Is it either way you should be wiping the gums?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then if their tooth erupts, then you would go to the dentist. And what happens at the first visit?
We usually call it a happy visit, where the dentist goes in there and examines, whatever teeth is in there. Sometimes it's just one.
I like that, a happy visit.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to get the child used to coming into the dentist. And we do apply fluoride varnish there.
On the one tooth?
On the one tooth.
Or two teeth, whatever
yes.
they have.
Yes.
Okay.
So fluoride varnish is really important because it helps to prevent cavities, extinctions, tooth enamels, reduces sensitivity to hot and cold foods, and it can be used especially for children who maybe just have one tooth.
That's very cool. So once you have like more teeth than one or two, how often should you go to the dentist? So if you have like 4, 6, 8, 12, do you go every 6 months? When they're little or toddlers, do you wait every year?
Preferably every 6 months.
Okay.
For all children.
And then I'm assuming a lot of kids are scared or hesitant.
Oh, yes. We get a lot of scared kids, but, we've been doing this. We're super nice here at Native Health. We welcome everybody. Myself, I have a daughter who was once young, feral, and
she didn't like going to the dentist?
Did not like going to the dentist. So therefore, she never saw me, but she would see my colleagues, the dentist, the dental hygienist. So now she's 22, and her teeth look beautiful. She's never had a cavity.
Ooh, that's impressive. Okay, so question for you. What's the very worst thing for a child's or children's developing teeth? Is it drinking soda? Is it drinking sweet drinks, sugary drinks? Is it sticky foods? Is it the baby bottle caries, which for people that don't know is what? When you're drinking the milk and you fall asleep, correct? And it pools in the bottom and you get the cavities? Yes.
So baby bottle tooth decay occurs when a child's teeth are frequently exposed to sugary liquids for long periods of time. It could include milk, formula, or juice, especially if you put them to bed with a bottle or at nap time. It usually starts in the upper front teeth and can lead to cavities. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends weaning a child from a bottle between 12 and 24 months of age. So if your child needs to fall asleep with a bottle, it's best to fill it up with water instead of juice.
Okay. What happens, so if they get baby bottle caries or baby bottle decay, does that affect the permanent teeth?
It sure does, yeah,
it does?
Because you don't want young teeth to be extracted just because it holds the place for the adult dentition coming in.
So it's really important to take care of this and not let your children fall asleep with a bottle or breast milk like pooling in the mouth.
Yes.
Okay. And if you're breastfeeding, like what do they recommend then? Like just like if you're breastfeeding them and they fall asleep, just leaving them and then...
Usually during when the baby is asleep, it's probably one of the best times to even go in there with a toothbrush because they're sleeping. My daughter was a heavy sleeper, so I was able to at least wipe her mouth out. So sometimes they'll let you, but
okay.
I know a lot of parents don't want to wake up their child, but you also have to think about their teeth as well.
Okay. Very important. So what are some of the tips that you've learned as a dental hygienist and being a parent of a child that didn't really love going to the dentist?
As a parent, when my daughter was very young, she didn't like to get her teeth brushed. I would brush her teeth when she was asleep. She, for some reason, allowed me to. It's just because she was a heavy sleeper. I also got her a battery-powered toothbrush, and that really helped out a lot because she liked that feeling of the toothbrush spinning around on her teeth. So that really helped out a lot. Plus, I had a really good dental hygienist who cleaned her teeth. It wasn't me, unfortunately, but it was one of my friends who cleaned her teeth, and she just loved her. So she did really well with my daughter.
I like having an electric toothbrush. I mean, boy, I'll tell you though, 2 minutes takes a long time when you're like waiting for it to stop and like go to the next quadrant. I think that, I don't know. And then are they still recommending that you brush your teeth with the 2-minute timer?
Yes.
Twice a day?
Yes. And we give out timers
okay.
to children here as well.
So I had read something somewhere, and I might have even sent it to you. I had read that kind of a newer thing, or some people believe that you should floss first and then brush. Is that true?
You know, for me, I I've always been brush first, then floss.
Okay.
Just because you could get the toothpaste, some of the toothpaste have a little bit of abrasiveness in, and it could get stuck between your teeth. So flossing afterwards does help.
Okay, so who's eligible to use Native Health dental programs? Is this open to anybody?
Yeah, everybody is eligible for Native Health programs. We take insurances, we do take access, and if you're not eligible for any insurances or access, we do have a sliding fee program.
Okay.
That you can see what you qualify for.
And the clinic's open Monday through Friday, right?
Yes,
8
Monday
to
through
5.
Friday.
And then you do have emergency walk-in the morning and in the afternoon if you're in pain, swollen, or bleeding, right?
Yes.
And I know we're almost out of time, but do you have like a very quick favorite success story?
Oh, okay. So I had a patient who hadn't had his teeth cleaned in years, and he had come in to see me, and I did a deep cleaning on him. He was in the verge of his gum tissue were just red, they were purple, and they were bleeding. And he came to me, and I had to do a cleaning. I had to do it in 4 different quadrants. And so now that I see him every 4 months, and oh my gosh, his gums look amazing. They are pink, they are healthy, and he just likes to smile.
That's awesome. It's intimidating. I mean, I think you're awesome. I go to you. So full disclosure, I do use Native Health Dental, as does my entire family. And I think you're amazing. But I'll tell you, it can be scary. And when you start on the journey of taking care of your teeth and your mouth and your gums, it's a lot. And you're always very kind and patient. And I always feel like you're not judgmental, which is nice. I had gone to a place before and I felt like they were very judgmental and they were saying things. And I'm like, but that's not true. Some people I know produce more plaque.
Yeah.
And have more problems with that. So, okay. So how can people find out more information? I know it's on the website at nativehealthphoenix.org under dental. And the dental department's phone number is what?
It's 602-279-5262, and just ask for dental.
Okay. And again, people can walk in if they're in pain in the morning and the afternoons and just present at either Central or Dunlap and say, I'm in pain, I need to see a dentist. They do have the sliding fee scale, access, or private insurance. And thank you, Dr. Boyd, for coming on. It's Children's Dental Health Month. I hope everybody checks their kids' teeth and make sure that they're healthy and have great smiles.
Thank you very much.
Coming up on Native Talk Arizona, Susan Levy chats with jazz vocalist Julia Keefe. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 2423 West Dunlap Avenue. Native Health is also located at Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org.
Welcome back to Native Talk Arizona, Native Health's Native American Cultural Affairs program, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. And with us today is Julia Keefe. The New York Times has called her a songbird of a jazz vocalist. She's a jazz singer, actor, and director of the Julia Keefe Indigenous Big Band. And we're super excited she's with us today. And welcome to Native Talk Arizona, Julia.
Oh, Himakas Kasiayo. Thank you so much. Really happy to be here.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and your background.
I am a member of the Nez Perce tribe based out of Kamiah, Idaho. That's where I spent my early childhood, and then I continued with junior high and high school in Spokane, Washington, before moving out of the Pacific Northwest to pursue music. I'm currently based in Brooklyn, New York, and I really love music. I really love building community through music, and seeing music and the practice of jazz as an experiential therapy and protective factor when it comes to substance abuse and suicide prevention in my community. So it's really become my life's calling to continue this work.
Wow, I can't wait to hear more. But I know when I was reading up about you that you have a lot of accolades. And, you know, some of the things that were written about you is She Gives Me Hope for the Future of Jazz, which was written by NPR, and one of the only jazz songbirds in Indian country. And so let's start with the basics. Tell me a little bit about jazz and the indigenous influence on jazz. I'm not very familiar with that genre.
So many people sort of credit jazz as, you know, America's first original music, which of course is inaccurate. The original music comes from the indigenous people of America, but it was the first music created in the Americas to rise to global popularity. And it started in the early 19 teens in New Orleans. New Orleans was this amazing sort of mixing pot of cultures and rhythms and harmonies. And as a result of that mixing, the music of the day was piano music called ragtime music, rag music. Scott Joplin and you know, composers of that ilk created this really fantastic music, and then once it sort of got into the parlors of New Orleans, the rhythms started to shift just a little bit. They weren't as straight, and they started to have a little bit of swing to them, and so that was sort of the birth of swing feel within this Western musical context. From there, the jazz and blues started to gain popularity thanks to the advent of recordings and radio shows. And throughout the 20s, 30s, and 40s, it became the music of the time. And what's so cool about indigenous people in jazz is that we have been a part of that fabric from the very beginning. One of the first vocalists to rise to prominence was an indigenous woman by the name of Mildred Bailey. She was the first woman to sing in front of a big band in the late 1920s, early 1930s. And she really did kick down the door of opportunity for female jazz vocalists that followed her. That includes Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. Household names, I would say, really do owe it to Mildred Bailey and that prolific role that she played in the evolution of jazz. Another part that's really fascinating about indigenous jazz history is that as a result of Indian boarding school experience, survivors of Indian boarding schools went back to their tribal communities with this knowledge of Western music and these Western instruments, because more times than not, they were put into school bands and school choirs and things like that. And so once they were back in their communities, they had this knowledge, and the music of the time, of course, was jazz music. So, you know, there is this long, not necessarily forgotten, but unspoken history of indigenous big bands and small jazz ensembles and marching bands in tribal communities all over Turtle Island. So it's a really lush history, but it's something that really hasn't been talked about in a very long time. And so it's been a great joy of mine to collaborate with other Indigenous jazz musicians and to really shine a light on that lush history.
I'm glad you're here, and I didn't know anything about like I don't know a lot about jazz at all. So really interesting and learning a lot. But did you grow up with music in your childhood? I mean, was it something, or were you interested in it, or did your family play at home?
So my parents say that I was singing, from the very beginning. They said I was always a singer, but neither of my parents are necessarily musical. My mom is in public health policy. My dad was a defense attorney. And so in terms of my upbringing, I was this sort of oddity in my love and affinity for music. They also filled our household with music. My dad was very much into, rock music from the 70s. My mom was really into folk music from the 60s and 70s. But my first exposure to jazz was actually through my mom. She had a greatest hits compilation CD of Billie Holiday's, and it was her Decca recordings greatest hits. And I remember the album cover. It was like this fabric periwinkle cover that is like forever seared into my brain. But my first musical memory was listening to Billie Holiday, and I had to have been maybe about 4 years old. And the memory is hanging out with my mom. My mom was sort of like tidying up the living room, and we were listening to Billie Holiday, and I was looking at this periwinkle CD cover. And that sound very much seeped its way into my subconscious. Billie Holiday is a very odd choice for a 4-year-old to find affinity with. Billie Holiday had a very, very sad and difficult life, and she emoted all of that difficulty, all of that pain through her music, and you can hear it in her voice and how she approaches a lyric. A lot of the orchestration behind her from the jazz big bands or jazz orchestras really lends itself to how she approaches a song. And so it's very haunting what she does. But for some reason, 4-year-old Julia just loved every tiny morsel of Billie Holiday's music. I think that was my first exposure to jazz, and Billie Holiday, haunted my childhood in the best possible way, in that her melodies very much seeped into my ear. But it wasn't until we moved to Spokane that I started studying music in a more sort of formal way, in like, a school choir. I had been singing prior to that, when I was living on the res, but I hadn't really studied it. It was all just sort of learning by ear, singing in church, singing at powwows. That was sort of the training coming up. But when we moved to Spokane, then I started learning in school, and jazz was very much the central focal point of the music education in Spokane, because of how close Spokane is to a large jazz festival called the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival that takes place at the University of Idaho every year. Our school program kind of revolved around Lionel Hampton. And so that's where I was introduced to competing as a jazz vocalist. As a result, my world started to revolve around competing at Lionel Hampton. So it was definitely an interest that was piqued at an early age. And because of the importance of music in public schools and music in other school institutions, I was able to really make it the focus of my education coming up.
Pretty amazing, a 3 or 4-year-old listening to jazz and Billie Holiday. Amazing, impressive. Wow, quite precocious.
Odd, weird.
I don't know, pretty amazing. I don't know too many 3 or 4-year-olds that have that attention span or can even or even interested in that. That's awesome. So how did you come up with the name the Indigenous Big Band? What does it mean? What does it encompass? Is it incorporating many different Indigenous communities in, whether it's North America or the world? And tell us a little bit more about that.
The Julia Keefe Indigenous Big Band kind of came about because of a grant funding opportunity. I had been working with Diné trumpeter Delbert Anderson for, about a year or so at that point. We had met during COVID lockdowns online, and what was supposed to be sort of like a 30-minute getting to know you conversation turned into like 3 hours of us just talking about jazz and talking about music and natives in jazz, indigenous people in jazz, and the history of bands in tribal lands and nations as a result of Indian boarding school experiences. We nerded out really hard for like a solid 3 hours, and it was awesome. And in the midst of that conversation, Delbert and I started talking about, man, how cool would it be if there was like an all Native American big band? Oh man, yeah, that would be so cool. That'd be so cool. Well, if you put it together, be sure to hire me. Oh no, if you put it together, be sure to hire me. And sort of this like joking back and forth of like, man, this is never going to happen. But if it does, like, please call me. And then a grant funding opportunity came about, and Delbert called me up and said, Julia, I think you need to submit a proposal for the big band. But he was like, man, I think this is the time, and this is the opportunity. So I wrote a big old proposal, talking about the history, talking about that an indigenous big band is not without precedent, and how vital it is to uplift indigenous jazz musicians now. And I was awarded full funding, which was just the coolest thing, but also the most daunting of responsibilities, because then it was, oh my God, like, are there enough of us out there to fill the ranks of a big band? And a big band can be from like 13 to 20 to 30 people. So I already had a very daunting task ahead of me of sourcing out musicians. But when it came to the name, there was this like, is it Native American? Is it American Indian Alaska Native? How do we define this? And one of the most impactful experiences that I've ever been a part of was a conference called Healing Our Spirit Worldwide. And it's an Indigenous Peoples Conference. And the conference that I went to was actually in New Zealand. It was hosted by the Maori people. And I loved being able to build community with Maori people and First Nations people and Pacific Islander people, Aboriginal people from Australia. It was this overarching Indigenous, and how our experiences are very similar in terms of being Indigenous people navigating colonial systems and colonization. And so in thinking about the big band, I didn't want to make it restrictive only to like lower 48 or only American Indian and Alaska Native. Yeah, I didn't want it to be restrictive in that way, because I know that we have that shared experience of being Indigenous people. And while we have different cultural practices and we come from different regions, the fact that I was able to get up on stage in New Zealand with an Aboriginal man and play a blues, that was an impactful moment for me. So not only do we have that shared experience of being Indigenous, but we have this shared language of music. And that is such a beautiful, unifying, healing, experiential therapy and practice. So I wanted to have the term Indigenous, not only because it opens up to more communities and allows me to build a larger community of jazz musicians to pull from, but also because that experience is so mutual. And it really was this beautiful moment when we did bring everybody together. We have guys who are Taino from the Caribbean, and we have Native Hawaiian, Alaska Native, First Nations. We have all of these folks from all of these places, and we all come together for that first gig. And while we are all from different cultures, with under the Indigenous umbrella, it was like a group of cousins getting together and sharing that time and sharing that space, having that shared experience, and then also having that language of music that we can communicate with as well. It was such a unifying moment and a profound moment of community building. So that's why the band became the Julia Keefe Indigenous Big Band, as opposed to Native American or Alaska Native or Native Big Band or something along those lines. Indigenous speaks so much more to the community that we are, I think.
So I want to go back to a couple things that you mentioned. One, you said, and I did not know this, you said a big band can be like a lot of people. Were you able to fill your big band with a lot of Indigenous musicians?
Yes. Again, once I got the funding, then came the immense responsibility of filling out the personnel. And I was nervous because of who I knew was, me, Delbert, Molly Obomsalin, who's Abenaki of Odanak, and that was about it, like in terms of Indigenous folks that I knew who were jazz musicians. So did I make a legal obligation to a funder that I couldn't fulfill? It was an anxiety experience. But what was beautiful was that I was able to conduct a ton of outreach through social media to universities and colleges, within tribal communities or close to Native communities, with huge BIPOC initiatives. I was able to conduct a ton of outreach. And what was amazing was that it was really the social media that took off and had the biggest return, because obviously, there's exponential growth in terms of your communication by way of social media. And so, this call for artists, as of right now, I think the roster of people is over 50 musicians reached out, and some of them were, up into their 90s. This guy, he was like, "Hey, I can't play anymore. My chops aren't there anymore, but I just want to reach out and, say I'm so proud of what you young bucks are doing, and we're like, if there's anything I can do." It was pretty amazing to build that connection. And then we had, a kid as young as 14 reach out from, rural Oklahoma, just sort of like, I thought I was the only one. And it's amazing because in the 1940s, these bands were so prolific across Indian country. And then, come, what was that, 2022, when the band formed, the love and appetite for jazz has really diminished in pop culture, but it's still something that, we have affinity towards, in our communities. And so while we have been disconnected because not many of us are pursuing it necessarily, we are still there. And so building that community together of Indigenous jazz musicians has been awesome. So for that first performance, there was an audition process, and people would film themselves, playing selections of music. So there was some screening to make sure that, at least for this first gig, it felt really, really solid, because, none of us knew each other, right? And so I put together a band of 16 people, which is sort of the Duke Ellington setup with 3 trombones. And that first gig, we didn't have a guitar, but we had piano, bass, drums, and then our trumpets, our trombones, and our saxophones. And I was there as conductor, but also as vocalist. And since then, we kind of oscillate between 16 and 18 people. We'll add in another trombone, and we'll add in a guitar for some pieces. So 18 is probably the nice big full sound of a big band. But you can get jazz big bands and jazz orchestras up to a lot of people. I've seen some jazz bands and orchestras, well into 20 people, well into 30 people. But 18 it feels really good. It sounds really good. Oftentimes, for budgetary reasons, we'll pull back to 16. But it's been awesome. The the next phase of this, I would love to get all 50 of us who have reached out together for like an Indigenous jazz camp to hang out and share music and share stories and build community. But, that'll be another grant some other time.
That is pretty amazing. 14 to 90 for people responding, and just that the younger person that reached out to you saying he thought he was the only one, and then somebody in their 90s. That's amazing that people of all ages and interested in participating. So I've got a question for you. I know that you did a 2023 cover, Lover Come Back to Me.
That song was actually part of my Mildred Bailey project. As I said, Mildred Bailey was the first woman to sing in front of a big band. She was a member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe. She grew up in Spokane, Washington. She helped Bing Crosby get his start. She was a very influential character in the evolution of jazz. And when I was coming up, I didn't know about her, and I didn't know about Native people, Indigenous people performing this music. There wasn't a ton of representation that I could really draw solace from or encouragement from. It really was just sort of my love of the music that propelled me forward. And even speaking about myself as like a Native American jazz vocalist sometimes was met with curiosity that bordered on animosity. And people would sort of get offended in that they couldn't understand what I meant when I said I'm a Native American jazz vocalist. Like, what do you mean by that? With the simple answer being, well, I'm a member of the Nez Perce tribe and I sing jazz. There really wasn't any sort of cognitive dissonance in that for me, but for a lot of people in the audiences that I performed for, it was something that they couldn't wrap their heads around. Until I stumbled across the name Mildred Bailey and started doing more research into her. And then as a performer, when I was able to talk about Mildred Bailey, it sort of allowed for me to exist with both my Indigenous and jazz identities combined. It's like, oh, here's this historical figure that like clearly this is a thing. So I'm allowed to be here and be my full and authentic self on stage, but only by providing that historical context, then that people were cool with it. But because Mildred Bailey was such a huge figure in jazz, and the fact that, her tribe is from the state of Idaho, my tribe is from the state of Idaho. She spent her formative years in Spokane. I spent my formative years in Spokane. There were these beautiful parallels that just couldn't be ignored. So I took it upon myself to dedicate at least one song to her each gig that I did throughout high school. And while I was in high school, I ended up doing a trip to New York City with my family, and we went to the Jazz Hall of Fame at Lincoln Center, which was awesome. It was so cool. I mean, to go to New York at all as a kid was just mind-blowing and fantastic. But I went to the Jazz Hall of Fame, and I saw all these beautiful, beautiful black and white photos on the walls and all these amazing jazz cats and legends that were hugely influential in the art form. And I was shocked at the small number of women who were featured on the walls. I think at that time there were only like maybe 5. But even more shocked that Mildred Bailey wasn't one of them. It's like, wait, we have a Jazz Hall of Fame, and the first woman to sing in front of a big band is not up there, is not featured. That kind of blew my mind, and the activist, daughter of a defense attorney part of me really got riled up. And so I wrote a letter to the folks at Jazz at Lincoln Center calling for Mildred Bailey's induction into the Jazz Hall of Fame. And I created a show around Mildred Bailey and being able to talk about her and talk about her life and to talk about the musicians that she worked with and the music that she performed. I mean, there was a time in jazz history that Mildred Bailey was the top vocalist in America. And what's nuts to me is that I found that album, that Billie Holiday album that I had listened to as like a 4-year-old. And within the pamphlet of that album is like the Billboard sort of like top vocalist or Variety top jazz vocalist of the time. And so there's like, you know, this rating. And in that graph, Mildred Bailey was the number 1 vocalist, then Ella Fitzgerald, and then Billie Holiday. And I thought it was so interesting that like in a Billie Holiday greatest hit from her Decca recordings, they have this chart showing that A, that she was 3rd, and B, that Mildred Bailey was number 1. And I had no idea as a kid, knowing who the heck Mildred Bailey was, but to sort of rediscover that later on and to really have that concrete evidence of her influence was really enlightening and invigorating for me as a jazz vocalist and a jazz historian and an advocate for honoring her legacy. So the Mildred Bailey Project took off. In 2009, I performed the Mildred Bailey Project at the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. for Jazz Appreciation Month. I performed parts of the Mildred Bailey Project when NMAI opened in New York City in 2012. It's a project that I've come back to over the years, but it wasn't until I think 2023 that I was able to get some grant funding to go into the studio and record the arrangements made for the Mildred Bailey Project.
The sky was blue and high above. The moon was new and so was love. This aching heart of mine was singing, lover, where can you be? You came at last, love had its day. The day has passed and you've gone away. And now this aching heart of mine is singing, lover, lover, come back to me. Well, I remember every little thing you used to do. I'm so lonely. Every road I walk along with you.
Love Her Come Back to Me was the single, the first and only single that I released from that album. I'm trying to release the album in its entirety this year. I hit a snafu with, copyright for a song. And so it all got sort of shelved for a moment, but the Mildred Bailey project is still very much the passion project for me. Mildred Bailey has been my North Star for, the over 20 years that I've been a jazz vocalist. And, I'm excited to continue that work.
Do you have a favorite Mildred Bailey song?
Oh man, my favorite Mildred Bailey song. It's so hard to choose. The song that she is most famous for is a Hoagie Carmichael tune called Rockin' Chair, which I perform, with the Mildred Bailey Project, but also with the Indigenous Big Band. And I love that tune. It's a fantastic song, amazing lyrics. But I think the song that I love to sing the most of Mildred is this beautiful ballad called I'll Close My Eyes. And it's just so lovely and delicate. I'll close my eyes to anyone but you, and when I do, I'll see you standing there. It's a really interesting melody that goes to unexpected places, but the lyrics are just so delicate and sweet. I think between those two, it would be a hard choice. That would be my Julia's choice, Sophie's choice, choosing between those two songs.
Wow, you have got such an amazing, incredible voice. We're almost out of time, but I've got a couple questions for you. I know you are doing some touring. Are you going throughout the United States this year, or what are your plans for the tours, and how can people find more information?
So touring, it really is, we've been focusing on the West Coast primarily, especially for the Julia Keefe Indigenous Big Band. We've done some touring on the East Coast. We're hoping to make it through the Midwest, but the funny thing about being a jazz musician nowadays is sort of, have voice will travel, have band will travel. So the routing hasn't been necessarily coherent. So we're around. The best way to keep up with us is to go to my website, juliakeefe.com, or follow me on social media at Julia Keefe Official. I keep everybody apprised of the wheres and the whats, especially for the Indigenous Big Band. But yeah, it's an adventure. 2025 is off to a great start, and we've only just begun.
That is awesome. All right, so since we're pretty much out of time, listeners, they can find more information. You just mentioned your website. Again, can you mention that and your social media handles?
Sure. My website is Julia Keefe, Julia Keefe, KEEFE.com. And you can also follow me on social media. It's at Julia Keefe Official. And I think that's for across all social media channels at Julia Keefe Official.
You said you're touring in different places, so they could just check that out on the website, right?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes we're in, the state of California for a couple of dates, or the state of Washington, or in the Pacific Northwest for a couple of dates. But really, we're just kind of bouncing around. So the best way to keep up with us is to follow us on social media, because I'm pretty good about promoting.
I just think you do your passion is there, and I imagine your shows, I know you're going to be in Phoenix, and by the time this airs, you'll probably be gone from Phoenix, but just listening to you and your passion and what inspired you is, incredible, and that you had such passion, when you were a preschooler, and that you followed your dreams. And listening to you talk about Mildred Bailey, it's been I've learned a lot. I've had a really great time listening to you and learning, and I wish you the best.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks. It really is my life's passion, my life's work.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and 90.7 FM KRDP. Our executive producer is Susan Levy. Sound engineer is Javier Quiroga. We hope you will tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please reach us at nativetalkaz@listen2krdp.com.